Hey friends, it's Pastor Tom here as part of our Connect conversations, which, as you remember, hopefully are just leaders talking about church, about community, and helping us stay focused on our future as we become Connect Church, which we're really excited about. And we have a special guest with us today. We have my good friend, Misheck, who we've just been talking before you guys, we press record. We've known each other for 10 years now, having met at Bible College. Misheck has an incredible family. And Misheck, tell us where you are currently based. Where are you serving?
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Tom. Great stuff. I was actually thinking about that yesterday and just realizing that, my goodness, we've known each other for about 10 years. That's crazy stuff. I didn't realize it was that long. I'm based in Southampton, my family, and leading a church over here called Riverside Family Church, and also having the responsibility within Assemblies of God churches, just looking after the southwest area of AOG churches in this way. So that's part of my remit and part of what I'm currently doing at the moment. So yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome. So we've known each other for a decade, met at Bible College. Also, you met your wife at Bible College. I met my wife at Bible College. Perfect. And you guys are doing awesome stuff in the South. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. But one of the things that I wanted people to know, one of the reasons why I invited you on this, is that one thing that most people watching this will have no idea about is that as leaders, as you'll know, we often kind of have other people who we just lean on sometimes, who we contact just to help us with stuff. Because, spoiler alert, none of us are perfect. None of us know all the answers. And you are someone who I know who I've seen many times really operate in a very prophetic gift. So obviously you're a pastor of a local church, but also someone who has a strong prophetic gift. And so even maybe early this year or late last year, can't quite remember. I contacted you and said someone in our church has had a dream that we're trying to work through, and actually you really helped me and our leaders to think through that. So I kind of want to just introduce people to you because they won't actually know that you've actually influenced our church even in the last year or so, just by helping us kind of think through some prophetic stuff. So yeah, maybe you could just share with us a little bit. There'll be some people watching this who maybe feel like they have prophetic gift or something they want to press into. Anything you want to say about that? Obviously you're a pastor, but would you call yourself a prophet as well? Is that something you're comfortable with, or what? Anything you want to share on that?
Well, I think the last thing I'd ever do is call myself a prophet. That would be the last thing I'll ever do. I think when it comes to those kind of gifts, it's the people who are on the receiving end of it who tend to call out what they receive and what they see. And I think that's very, very important. And I think partly what needs to happen in this season, there's been a lot of leaning into what God is saying. So in order for us to understand that difference in the dynamics of what's happening, I think discernment plays a huge part. Where there's a lot of noise and a lot of stuff being said, I believe this is what's happening, God is saying this, God is saying that. When there's a lot of God is saying and you think, oh my goodness, all of this is being thrown at me, I think discernment is absolutely crucial. One of the things that I've now come to the phrase that I've sort of designed just in my own personal time with God, so to describe what discernment to me is. I think discernment now for me is identifying the DNA of God in the midst of chaos.
Very good.
See what I mean? So it's discernment for me is identifying the DNA of God in the midst of chaos. That means no matter what is erupting around us and what is being said, because you and I know the DNA of God, if it's not in that noise, if it's not in what's happening, then I'm not interested. I'm not interested at all, and I know what to push away and what to take on board, because if it carries his DNA, it's for me. If not, put it all away. But because it's a lot of noise, I don't know what your experience is, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been thrown out there. So identifying the DNA of God in the midst of chaos is discernment, and that is what we really, really need now more than ever.
That's so good. What amazing insight you've shared already. Just can we just push into that a little bit? So when you say the DNA of God, have you got any thoughts about, from a kind of prophetic point of view, essentially that's how do we hear the Spirit in his voice in the cauldron of voices? Any kind of tips or ideas or ways just for you personally that you do that? What metrics or measurements are you using to filter things to see if it is the DNA of God or not?
I think a big part of it is being okay to get it wrong. and getting it wrong again and
Yeah.
again and again, because that is part of, again, deciphering through the different voices that will be coming at you. So for example, for me, I don't need to be, to be standing up with my eyes closed in order for me to know that it's God. I could be washing the dishes and ping, something comes in my spirit.
Right.
So, for example, there was something that the Lord laid on my heart for you guys as a church ahead of what you're about to go into. That didn't come to me whilst I was specifically, laying down on the floor. And yes, there is a place and a time for all of that stuff. But I think over the years of getting things wrong and being okay with that and learning from it, I've finally come to the place where I believe, and obviously this is not being arrogant or anything, but I believe I can sense it when it's God speaking to me, and when it's a great thought that my mind has put together. And I think that journey is different for everybody. That journey will be different for everybody. So I would not necessarily emphasize the prophetic element, but I would rather emphasize the discernment element, because, prophecy is there. I mean, people can prophesy. Not everyone is a prophet, and we all know that. So the abundance of the voice is there, but there is a depletion in the discernment side of things. So I think that for me is huge part of, actually, I think that's a huge part of the prophetic element, So when somebody says, oh, this is from God, and you're thinking, no, it's not.
Yeah.
You can tell straight away. So I think I'll do it the other way around. Build on discernment and your prophetic gift will thrive.
That's so good. I'm tempted to just jump straight into what do you feel like God has got to say to us, but we'll hold that for a second, because I'm already excited about that. But just one more thing about that I'd be interested to know your perception on, just some of that experience that you've got. You said like there's a lot of voices, and in some ways the easiest bit is kind of saying this is what I think God is saying, and it's easy to throw those kind of phrases, isn't it? God is saying, God is doing. But one of the real gifts that I think people like you have is that ability to hear from God, but also to carry some of that, know the discernment is also the timing and the way to communicate. Immature people would just blurt out what they feel like God is doing or saying, and actually that can be unhelpful if it's not done well. Any advice from your kind of experience of how to carry what you're hearing from God as well, not just blurt it out? It's a big question.
So for me, it's a huge question, absolutely huge question. So for me, I use two scales, and the main, I think both of them anchor around my heart. I know when God presses something on my heart with such urgency, it's something that needs to get out of my heart, because my heart can't contain that sense of weight and urgency for a long period of time. It's there, it's set on me. So it's one of those situations where sometimes it could be a prophetic dream, right? And when I wake up in the morning, it's set right here. And I know that I'm not going to be able to get through my day with this thing set on me. So I know it has to go. It has to be delivered. Whereas the times where he delivers something to me, and I'm very much aware of it, it's there, and I can actually pray into it. And I think, okay, yeah, that's fine. I might need to sit on this a bit more. But when the right time comes, that urgency, that weight comes upon me again, and I know this is now time to release this thing. And it's exactly the same with what I feel for your guys. It's set on me right now. So if you were to say, come on, drop it, I would just give it now, because I know for a fact this is not something for me to sit back with for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 months or whatever, because the weight of it is set on me right now.
Yeah, that's so good. And we're going to keep building towards that. It's coming very soon. But we are filming this. We are filming this during lockdown. This is the end of June. So we were just talking before we press record again. We shared some insights and stuff already. But we were just saying before we press record that it feels a bit like that initial phase after lockdown started of kind of, getting churches set up online, doing different things to make sure people are cared for and protected and all that kind of stuff, and also trying to connect with new people. Those initial response things have happened, and if we're not careful, we're going to dive straight into, today is the day the government have announced the guidelines for churches being able to meet and stuff like that. If we're not careful, we jump too fast into that. But I just wonder if you, just for a couple of minutes before you share specifically for us, anything generally that you want to reflect on with some of that kind of discernment heart of lessons from lockdown, I guess, if you wanted to give it a cheesy title. Anything that you're sensing in particular that just would help other people think things through?
Wow. There's a lot, actually. There's definitely a lot. It's been a great season for me. In this period of time, just again locking myself away, just spending time with God, and I think like all of us, we all did this whole thing of going online and responding. And even with just that alone, I remember the first, because we transitioned into online church within 2 days. You know, it was just like switch. We're there. We're going. We're getting on with it.
Yeah.
And I remember straight after that. Pausing, actually finally pausing and thinking, okay, so how are you doing, God? What does this all look like, and what does this mean? And he simply said this to me. He said, I'm not trying to ask you to stop what you're doing with online church and everything else, but I just want you to interrogate your heart and say why. And I said, okay, what's going on? And he says, well, the reason why there's this wave of jumping onto online church, it's not because people want to reach more people. The motivation behind it was, let's try and keep what we've always had, at least to another level. And he says, well, what if this season was the breaking of a shell for us to see things completely differently to anything that we've ever done or seen before? And if our initial response is, oh, how can we harness some of what we've always had and still keep it together, albeit virtually, and yet we could be missing some of the nuances of God saying, hey, there could be another way. There could be something that is completely different that could come out from all of this. And I'm thankful to God, but yes, he's gracious and he's loving and he's full of mercy. And yes, we have seen lots and lots of people come to the exposure and knowledge of Jesus Christ through this season. But I think for God, the most important thing is not the action. I've noticed that for God, the most important thing is the motive. What was the motive behind the action of going online? I'll put my hand up first. My motive was, okay, how can I keep people gathered together? That was the action, and that was the motive behind the action. And so he was just challenging me on some of those things. And I remember sitting back after those 3 days, I'm thinking, oh man, oh goodness. And I said to him, and I said, are you saying we should pull all of this down now? He said, no, son, don't pull it down. It's great. I'm just going to use that for a greater benefit. But I just want you to learn from this that I'm more concerned about the motive rather than the action. And so that was just something that worked through. But anyway, in terms of some of those things that I've sort of lessons in lockdown, like you said, I think number one was, he said to me, don't hide your limp. This season has been a limp for the church. Something has changed in the makeup of church. Something has changed in the fiber of churches. So like the Jacob narrative where he's wrestling with God and he comes away with a limp. We all know that. But I felt the Lord say to me, don't hide your limp. Stop trying to walk straight and act as though you don't have a limp. You've just been through something that is absolutely significant in the life of church. It's going to affect your mobility. It's going to affect your perspective. It's going to affect your outlook. It's going to affect your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, all of those things. Don't try to hide your limp, but instead come to God with that limp and then watch what he will do through it. And so that's something that I'm also personally processing and working through for myself. I think the other thing as well, which also ties in with your word, is he said to me, over the years we've always emphasized the gathering, the community aspect of church at the expense of the individual. And he says the church now needs to flip the model and emphasize the individual, empower the individual, because once an individual is empowered, the community aspect of it is a gathering of empowered individuals. So whenever any of these things happen and the community element is taken away for whatever reason, the church does not lose its potency. It doesn't lose its focus. It doesn't go into panic mode, because the church is not emphasizing the gathering. The church is emphasizing the individual. And so that model is something that I'm still wrestling with. I haven't got a clue what that will actually look like. but this is something that I'm still working through and processing for myself. So these are just some of the few things that, you know, I know we're all having to learn. We're all having to learn through this, and but I think for me, those are some of the 3 little pointers where I'm currently seated right now, and I'm thinking, okay, what does our church look like going forward? All I know is I can't afford to just default back into what was. And this is why for us personally, I've said to my team already, we can't just rush back into, oh yeah, let's just get back into the gathering, because one of the issues that we're faced with right now is a situation where there is a fuel of novelty that is pushing a lot of people to want to get back into the building, but that fuel is not taking into consideration that what was is not going to be what they're coming back to. And I think we, as leaders, we're in that position where we need to manage those two and see where. See how God helps us to, or we need wisdom to guide that conversation through, you know. So yeah, so these are just some of the little things that I'm toying around with and you know, pressing into, and I'm definitely going to be knocking on your door because I need help.
That's so true. I remember a quote from, you know, Mike Breen, who used to be in Sheffield, started the 3DM network and stuff. He used this phrase that I remember him saying once, and it's really stuck with me. I think it's like what you're saying now a little bit. He said, you can build church but never make disciples, but you can't make disciples and not build the church.
Build church. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So I think like that's a real challenge for us. Is it's easy to say, how can we get back to church?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if we were asking ourselves, how is God raising disciples through lockdown? The church will naturally emerge from that.
Come out from that. Yeah.
Because if you look at Acts 2, you know, the church didn't start and then disciples come along. The disciples just naturally became the church because they were empowered by the Spirit, and it's the overflow of discipleship, isn't it?
That's
so yeah, that's such a helpful.
That's exactly it. That's crucial. That's very good. Very good.
Bless you, Misheck. Hey, so we've built this crescendo to you saying that, you know, you've got a heavy word on your heart. So yeah.
Oh, I've forgotten. What was that again?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no. I think that's very, very great, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think that's also part of all of this makeup. So for you guys, I just really sense, and again, I would encourage you to wait up, do what you guys do with your team, and you know, if it doesn't resonate with you guys, again, just chuck it away. But I just really sense that the Lord saying to you guys that the makeup of your church going forward has got to reflect the womb through which it has come, and this womb that this church is going to come through, it's definitely got some of its DNA, or at least it should have some of its DNA represented in the makeup of the church. And I love the name Connect Church, because what I also felt the Lord say with that is, it's not going to be connection top down, but it's actually going to be horizontal connection in multiple directions. So as part of everything that he wants to do through that model is the emphasis, again, of the individual, empowering the individual to know that something just came now. He said, remember how the government, in everything that they are doing now, they're emphasizing the R number, the rate of infection. And I feel the Lord even right now is saying, your job as a team is to make each individual as infectious as possible and increase the R number to connect to multiple people just before we even gather as a church. But our job as leaders, I'll even take that for me as well. I think this is great. So our job as leaders is to raise infectious individuals to connect on a multiple level, and I think just to really spread horizontally, and that has to be reflected in the model. If you're not intentional about it within the model, then it just won't work. So I think even in the value system of church, that has to be emphasized quite drastically, to say, well, actually, it's you carry the R number. Where is your R number at the moment? Is it 1? or is it 3, or is it 5, or is it 10? And it's okay. Every single level, there's place for 1, there's a place for 3, there's a place for 5, there's a place for 20, just depending on gifting and capacity and availability. But I think there's going to be such a rapid rate of infection in terms of how individuals will be able to just spread through it. But the emphasis has got to come away from top down to horizontal.
Mate, that's awesome. That kind of is a picture and a summary of a lot of the backstory behind our journey to becoming Connect. And one of our values moving forward is, in fact, it's the only value. So this is interesting. The only value that was already part of Scunthorpe Baptist Church that we're taking with us to Connect Church, because what we're saying is we had it as a value before, but we never lived it out. Now we want to take that value and live it out. The value was we don't maintain, we multiply.
Wow.
Which
Wow.
the R rate language from the government is very much about once we can get it to manageable levels, then we can change things. But actually, multiplication is the opposite. It's unmanageable, isn't it? It's exponential.
Very good.
So I, on behalf of our church, receive that word and the spirit of multiplication that comes with it.
No, it's good. And I think as a team, I think you and your team have got to be comfortable not being in control.
Right.
Because yes, being in control and leading are two different things. So yes, you're bringing leadership, but not being in control in that sense is a slightly different dynamic, because what you're trying to do is making sure that the individual, what's in the individual who's multiplying. So you know that what's being reproduced and multiplied outside of your immediate interaction will still represents the DNA, not just of you as a leader, but most importantly the DNA of God.
Yeah.
And that's part of the connectivity, the connecting points that will just be completely dismantled across the board. And I would strongly encourage you guys to really be courageous in the model, in the connect model that you will set up. I don't know if this is just the language I'm using. What's the connect model? What does the connect model look like? Emphasize the connect model over the gathering. Please, 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 whatever you do, emphasize your connect model on a widespread sphere over the gathering in the one in the one place that you all gather. And I can't emphasize that enough for you guys. I think that's going to be absolutely crucial in terms of what comes out from this.
That's so good. Very, very helpful. So say that phrase again about the womb. Just say that again for me.
So Connect Church has got to resemble the womb through which it has come. It's not by chance. You guys could have launched in January. You could have launched in February. You picked April because it seemed like a perfect timing thing that would work to just really bring a new vision, which I get it. But actually, with everything that you've now gone through, you can't. There's no way you can rub out March, April, May, June, July, whether you decide to launch in September, because you're now in the womb. This womb that you've gone through has completely shifted the makeup, the fiber of everyone who's going to be part of Connect Church. So you've got to that womb has got to be reflected in the makeup of this church. So I would strongly encourage you to work through that and what that actually looks like, and don't be afraid. I've seen many churches change names, and that's literally what they did. They changed names. But you guys have been perfectly positioned by the grace of God to not only have a glimpse of what is to come, and you've got the perfect name and the model and everything else. And then it says, okay, great. Before you birth this, I need to change the womb because it can't just look exactly like what was. So you have to go through this womb, and now what will come out will be completely different. So just really wrestle with it, and don't shy away. It might be uncomfortable. It might not look as appealing. But actually, this is the point. And the other thing is, thank you. The other thing is, we are in a season. I feel the Lord saying you are in a perfect season to sow rare seed. You are in a perfect season to sow rare seed. other times you can sow all kinds of seeds in terms of vision and strategy and how you do church, and and that's fine. But this, again, part of the same womb, the seed that you put in this particular womb, it can be as rare as you like, and it will bear fruit. But but you decide, do you want to go for the usual kind of seed that you can sow in any other season? Or do you want to take advantage of this unique womb and season we have and sow something that will generate a different kind of fruit?
That's so good. Well, next leaders meeting's got something on its agenda now.
Hey, work it through. You guys work it through, and like I said, we do life together, and if I can be of any help in maybe just processing some of that stuff through, I'm more than happy to do that. But I think for me now, I'm just going to be praying for you guys and praying for the church to catch, because this is a model that the connectivity model has got to be caught from the congregation right through to the team as well. So
that's so good. Thank you. If we could just push into one slight other thing, and then we'll wrap up for today at least. Sure. But one of the other values that we're really trying to make central to our church is this phrase that everyone has value and adds value. And I know in your context, Riverside, how long have you been there? Like 2-3 years now, something like that?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah. And I know, like, even in that 2 years, there's been a shift from what I've seen from a distance anyway, of kind of the makeup of the church, and some change of diversity and different representation and all that kind of stuff. I just would be curious about your own insights into that. Everyone has value, one element of that, but everyone also adds value. Anything you would kind of chuck in from your own experiences of what that can look like in a local church.
I think that's brilliant. That is really good. I like that. Everyone has value and adds value. Can I steal that? Can I just?
Sure, go for it.
No, I think it's brilliant. So number one has got to be real conviction. Do you, as an individual, genuinely believe that everyone has value and adds value? Because I think, yes, it would be great to have as a value thing, and I know you'll have to work through that with the whole congregation. But I think the starting point for each individual is working through that conviction. So for me, in my own experience in working through a church, helping a church to transition to diversity, it started with me. It started with me. So, for example, working through dynamics like, because you said everyone has value and adds value. Okay, so for example, let's take worship for a second. Worship genres and dynamics are so different depending on where people come from. I went through a season personally where I stopped asking the church to play certain types of music just so that we can represent the diversity in the church. But instead, I went through the other way around, where I, in my own playlist, in my own car at home, would play a vast array of different genres of worship music and different expressions of worship music, until I could really, again, come back to that place where I could engage in the presence of God through that.
Right.
Because then it's no longer a superficial, tokenistic kind of, hey, let's just do this kind of song to appease the kind of people we have in our congregation. But this is now authentic. I can engage into the presence of God through this type of music and that type of music and that type of worship music, and all of that together has now shaped me. So number one, it's the framework, the multicultural framework of the leader that will start to shape and filter through to the team. And then from the team, the congregation. So I think those are some of the crucial things that that I've had to work through. So because I've been working on it for quite a number of years, God has this interesting way of just, flow outworking what you and I have as leaders into the life of our teams and into the life of the congregation. So every time I've worked through and helped churches through this, I've never looked at the policy of a church. I've never looked at the congregation and all of that. I've just focused on the leader. If I get it right with a leader, it would naturally filter through. So we've talked about worship music. Food is another thing. There are certain types of food that I would naturally be drawn to, But again, food plays a huge part of somebody's value, what they bring. So, you said everyone brings value, and everyone adds value to the dynamics of a church. And so every time we've had like food gatherings, there's some type of food I think, oh man, I probably would not eat that. But if I truly believe that somebody adds value to the life of everything that we are doing, I have had to now get used to all kinds of dishes, try out new things that wouldn't come naturally to me. Why? Because food plays a huge part in diverse cultures. Huge part. If
That's so true.
if I can accept somebody to come and be part of my church, but I've got nothing to do with a huge part of their value system, their culture, then that's not fully engaging with the person and fully accepting that person. And that can be difficult, because I think sometimes when we pursue multicultural or diversity in the church, what we're really saying is, come as you are, just as long as you become like us.
Right.
And that's not the right model. So we've got to switch it around. We've got to be, if we're saying we really want to be diverse, then if you've got 5 nationalities in your church, then you've got to work through all 5 of them and embrace them as your own, and look at what is important, how they access God in their own perspective and in their own worldview, and you've got to engage with that.
Yeah.
Their food is crucial. What's happening in that dynamic? Because within this context, you got to understand that this is like a diaspora kind of network for a lot of multiculturals. So the makeup of what is important to them is very different to if they were still in their own home country. So they like the children of Israel with the flatbread that they had to take with them from Egypt to run away and go into the wilderness. It's like that for many of these people that we will find in our churches today. They could only take the flatbread with them back to come into this nation, and that flatbread is how they access their God, which is the same God with all of us, but just different worldview, and their food. Because everything else around them is very different. Everything around them is different. Society is different. Context is different. But the flatbread that they could bring with them is God, accessing God, and food. And as leaders, we've got to engage with those two massively.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much. I'm just trying to bridge those two things together a little bit. So your comment about, focusing on the individual and then the gathering kind of being the outcome of healthy individuals, I guess. I guess that's part of the like adds value bit. So anything you would say about your experience of creating a church culture where it's not you as the leader and your team doing everything and then other people being the consumers, but how actually if we do create a culture of embracing one another and encouraging and building one another up and focusing on the individuals and developing people, then naturally that should create a kind of what you might call the priesthood of all believers type thing. Any thoughts you have on that, about how that's actually part of the diversity thing as well, of like actually we have a picture, don't we, of like in church stereotypes of what people should look like or be like to do certain roles, and we tend to link that to title as much as anything. But actually, if everyone has value and adds value, there's a diversity of what we should expect prophets or teachers or apostles or just kids workers or hospitality teams. They should look not like the stereotype, I guess. Any thoughts on just your experience of being part of a church where you're trying to encourage everyone to play their part, get on the pitch, kind of thing?
That's great. I think number one, you've got to kill the stereotype. You've got to kill the stereotype and create a level playing field. Right. Because with that level playing field, you now genuinely, and without having any subconscious biases or anything on how things should be done. So I had to go through that, because I can say, yeah, you do this thing, great, you get it done. But what I'm really hoping for is that you will do it in the way that I would do it. And if it's not done in that certain way, I'm thinking, it's not really good enough. So I had to kill this thing before I can get into this model where I can say, yes, everyone, let's bring value in all the different aspects. Again, coming back to the context, where we've said before, you've got this flatbread mode that has come through. If we don't truly allow people to have that opportunity to express their gratitude and servitude within the context of church without any subconscious biases, we won't get the diversity that we're looking for. So I think, number one, we have got to kill the stereotype. That it just has to go completely and truly embrace people in their difference, with the different nuances that they will bring into the mix, and be prepared for a church that has got a nice mixture to it, because it will not. Some people will struggle with it. This is what I said before. A lot of us, when we talk about multicultural church, we say, "Yep, come for the optics, but just come and be like us."
Yeah.
But if we're truly saying, "Come and let's be one," then that means we're going to be engaging on multiple levels, and bearing in mind people will do things differently, from us. So, for example, I know how you work. You are a details guy. You're great at making sure things are done properly. Like, yeah, it's just spot on. But again, it's going through a journey where people need to catch the why behind the what. So for example, you emphasize not your own personal makeup, but you now emphasize the excellence in the things of God. So what you're now saying is you're emphasizing a bigger picture than white, black, Asian, or any other minority ethnic. You're emphasizing the one thing. Does this please God? Because what I've noticed is, for every context globally, regardless of race, regardless of creed, when it comes to emphasizing God and upholding God, there is a real sense of excellence and desiring to get things on a very good, excellent level. That has nothing to do with context or race, but it's everything to do with the majesty of God. So I think that has to be part of this huge makeup that emphasizes God over individual context or individual race, or preference. So and once you do that, you'll find that everyone can relate to that. I really need to do my best. If I'm going to be doing chairs, I really would love the chairs to be done properly. Not because Pastor Tom wants things to be done in a certain way, but actually I think, if it's for God, I really want this to be done properly. If I'm going to be on welcome team, I really want to welcome people. I want people to really see God through me, regardless of skin color, regardless of any of those things. So that would be just my little bit of contribution to that.
That's so good. And like, we all want to be part of those kind of churches, don't we? But there's like the thing you've said, which I think is perfect, and I need to go and think about, is that it starts with me and starts with the I, doesn't it? If I want to be part of that kind of church, then I have to be willing to pay some costs for that, like to make some sacrifices.
Absolutely, you'd need to, and it hurts, by the way. I might as well tell you now. It really does hurt. But if you go through it first, then as the pain starts to filter to your team and the congregation, they can find hope when they see you still standing, because you can tell them, hey, I know the pain. I went through it. I still had to process it. But here I am. It's great on this side. So they can trust your leadership through this whole process of becoming diverse, because something that's different, or people who are different, can be, it can be difficult to just engage with completely. I think we're naturally wired to lean to our own kind,
of course.
But as leaders, we have to be intentional to break that and really make sure we are building diverse churches. So, for example, some leaders can say, "Well, my geographical location naturally lands me to have just a particular people group within my church." Okay, that's fine, but it's not about just the people who are gathering. This is what I said to you in the beginning. My concern is whether or not a leader has a multicultural framework within their own leadership style and model, because that is crucial for me more than the geographical placement, because God might move a whole bunch of different people into that area overnight. What happens, if the leader doesn't have a multicultural framework? So for me, that's why I would emphasize that over the congregation.
So good. And we have to remember, don't we, that diversity, there's huge diversity within some of the categories that we create. So our community might be particularly one kind of, might be mostly white British people, for example. But even within that, there's huge diversities of background, family story, there's so many varied experiences within that. And actually, when we say diversity, we mean we're not going to stereotype people who have a particular education or have a particular anything. We're going to take people at what you just talked about, which is the, before God stuff, and wanting to desire to see them be able to fulfill all that God has made them to be, and to embrace it. Because actually, we want the if you'll know as a church leader, if everyone in our church was like me, we would just wind each other up and probably wouldn't actually get on. we need each other, and it would be such a one-dimensional church. It would be a disaster.
It would.
We're looking forward to heaven.
It would not work.
Yeah. We're looking forward to heaven, but we want the church to represent heaven now, don't we? Which is certainly diverse. Misheck, you are such a blessing.
That's good.
You're such an encouragement.
Bless you, mate.
You just ooze the goodness of God, and carry His wisdom. And
so do you, man.
Bless you. Would you
it's
be
good? Well, 10 years ago, when I remember 10 years ago when I got to Manhanha, the whole experience at the Bible college was shaped by you. You literally were the first person who greeted me in the car park, and you took me to D10. You remember that?
Yeah. Wow.
Room D10 was where you took me, and you literally helped me to just go on the greatest adventure. That was the trajectory shifting point for me for the rest of my life. And you were that guy. You were the guy who met me, who befriended me, who helped me through that whole season as a first year student. So thank you, man. Really appreciate you.
Oh, well, I'm proud of you where you've gone, Misheck.
Virtual hug.
Absolutely. You have gone above and beyond. And hey, maybe one day we'll actually get to meet you in Connect Church in person, and you can come and minister to us.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
Send our love to Charlene and your wonderful family, and may God bless you and Riverside Church as you emerge from lockdown. May you emerge with all of the things that God is doing in your womb at this time. May you emerge with all the things that He has for you. Bless you, mate.
Oh, brilliant. No, same to you, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Jeff.